Hey everyone, Emil here with the pre-show of this episode. I don't have much to tell you, but thank you for 2,500 followers on Twitter. And it's when this episode goes live on Sunday, it's the last day of our big celebration of 2,000 followers. So we're already halfway to 3,000, and that's amazing. Another thing is Why Your World Matters will be out in probably 1.5, 2 weeks-ish. I don't know yet how long I need, but around that, probably. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I don't have anything else to tell you but to give us a nice review and follow on the social media platforms. We will see you there. Have fun with this episode, everyone. Bye bye.
Hello, lovely people, and welcome back to DoubleDM podcast, to our episode 35. With me today is, as usual, my lovely co-host, Emil. How are you today?
Hello, how are you doing? I'm doing fine. It's Thursday.
Yes, it is. And is it a special Thursday for you, or why are you emphasizing this?
No, it's a good day.
Yeah, nothing special happened for me. Today, at least?
Well, when the people listen to this, it's Sunday, and that's a special day.
It is.
Why
Would
is
you like
that?
to tell us why?
Okay, I should tell you why. Okay, so DoubleDM has 2 hours ago announced something special, my friends. If you haven't seen our Twitter account yet, you may not know, but we've announced Titan's Call, a DoubleDM produced actual play show in D&D 5e for your entertainment. And my suffering is the DM of that one, with Niels and 2 of our friends being the players.
Yay! Nerve-wracking, exciting, nervous. Those are the emotions I feel right now.
If you've seen the trailer, Titan's Call is a show that I don't want to talk too much about. On the promo picture we have, there is the big name Titan's Call, and after that there's a subtext, and that reads Ancient, Angered, and Awakened.
Oh boy, I think we're in a lot of trouble, I guess.
You are. Oh
Yay!
Yes. Oh yes.
But yeah, I think that's the point of D&D, overcoming challenges and surviving danger, I guess.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of D&D, do you know what also happened?
I heard about the future of D&D stream.
The future of D&D stream. Yeah,
I'm excited. It is
D&D 5.5.
Yeah, it is quite a roadmap, I would like to say. And
the
new book that is coming out pretty early next year, or which was planned this year, Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse. I'm excited for this one. I think this will give DMs and everybody basically pretty good options. I mean, what I heard from it was like 250 monsters and stat blocks and over 30 playable races with all new overalls and tweaks and rebalancing and stuff.
Yeah. And it's the first on the roadmap to the 5.5, right?
Yeah. And I think the art that was shown was just gorgeous. There isn't anything more to say about this. It's just gorgeous. You need to look it up. It's insane. So that happened.
Yeah, the thing about D&D 5e is there are a few changes that they made that I think can be pretty fun. For example, I think they said something about monsters or general NPCs not having spell slots anymore. Which I love, because I don't have to track that shit anymore. Because if you've ever run a battle with like 6 spellcasters as NPCs, you lose, your brain just goes boom.
Track. Yeah, it's insane. It's way too much. And even if it's just one spellcaster plus his minions in a boss fight, for example, it's just so much to keep track of. What he used, when he used it, what does it do, how long does the effect take, and then managing every NPC in the room as well, plus environmental effects and all that is a lot. I quite like the change, I think.
I want to like what it implies. That's the thing, right?
Exactly.
Having to track less stuff as the DM in combat is great because, like, the DM tracks a lot of stuff in combat and generally, right?
Yes.
And the best thing you can do in prep is make sure you either remember that stuff or don't have to keep track of that stuff. That's half of my prep. How can I make this easier to run for me?
Yeah.
Right? That's
sounds about right.
So that's basically what I want. Now, if they also find a way for me to actually track everything, that's also a big thing.
Mm-hmm. And what I like in the pages that were shown, where there are new tables that you don't have to use, but give you flavoring options for those stat blocks.
Yeah.
Or bards, different performance acts, not just music and stuff, but there's a whole table and how spellcasters now can, or what their spellcasting focus now is, and stuff like this. It isn't anything game breaking or game changing, but it gives you a lot of flavoring and describing options.
I mean, the thing is about that's probably a quality of life change for newer players or for newer DMs, right?
Exactly.
Because, like, we know how to make the book our own, right? We take the book, take the stat block, change 3 stats, and play it however we wanted to play it. That's something every GM more or less does. The thing is, though, giving newer players a table that says, well, you have these 20 options or 10 options you can roll on to change the stat block a little bit maybe and even get the flavor right. That's huge because that encourages them again to develop the skill of being adaptable.
Yeah, it just makes the whole system more accessible. It takes the fear away of getting something wrong or not doing it right, or at least a part of it, because it gives you more options to use without you having to think about it that much, or you don't need the skills to that just come with 3 or 5 years of experience DMing already. Because there are some options for you.
What they won't change is the core of D&D, of D&D 5e, because the books will be backwards compatible.
Yeah.
So you will be able to play with the normal PHP. You will, they will release a new PHP, right? The thing is about, like, there are so many people that now go, wait, I need to buy new books again, and like, that's the nature of these games, right? They need to change every 5 years or so.
Yeah, but you don't have to throw away your old books because you can still use everything in it, which is
that's why it's not a 6th edition. It's 5.5, right? Or how the internet calls it, evolution or 5-evolution or what? Because in the stream they had like it's the next evolution of D&D, and everyone went mad on that.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's 5.5.
Yeah, it's gonna be well, people calling it 5.5, but so many people make jokes about it too. I think it's the right step, right? It's the anniversary of D&D. It's
50 years, I think.
Yeah, 50 years. It's 50 years. I don't think there's a better date to release that. There can't be. I'm though very looking forward to what they will announce for let's be real, that can't be the only celebration they are gonna have in the for the anniversary.
No way this is the only thing.
There will be so much more to come in the next 3 years until they actually have that anniversary. Like, I'm sure that there will be they had setting books in the roadmap, right? One old one and 2 new ones. So I'm guessing that one of the old settings is coming back.
But in a refurbished, renewed
in a 5e way.
Yeah.
And the thing about then the next 2 ones, I like Planescape is a setting book, so it won't be one of the 2 new ones. But I think that there can be something adjacent to it. I believe that there may be something coming where you hop between planes, but not in the Planescape way.
Yeah, that would. Yeah,
nice. I think that the 2 new setting books won't be anything Magic the Gathering related, at least not Ravnica or Theros, for example. Those 2 we have, so it won't be anything like that.
Yeah, let me think, because we already have something about Strixhaven.
Yeah, Strixhaven is coming.
We have something about Ravnica.
Yeah,
and we have something about Theros.
Yeah, those 3 we have.
There's still Ixalan, Innistrad. There is still a lot to unpack from the Magic the Gathering world, which would work so good in the D&D setting.
I believe that there will be one of those. And the other one will be something completely different from the 2 setting books that are not announced yet. And the returning setting will be one of the old ones that people have been asking for so long.
Yeah, and what I gathered from the stream was that they were putting an emphasis on the whole multiverse thing a lot in the next 3 years, which I'm hoping for, because then you get you get information and stats and general resources that you can use in every game, not just a setting specific.
I mean, okay, so I don't know anything about Magic the Gathering lore or world or whatever, but those worlds like Strixhaven, Innistrad, Theros, Ravnica, are they connected in any way?
They are kind of, I think.
It's a plane hopping again. They are different planes and you hop between.
Exactly, and then there are the Planeswalkers book.
The Mordekainen book, obviously. Oh my god, the Mordekainen book is Monsters of the Multiverse.
Yeah,
I'm reaching into a bag here, right?
Yeah, we are.
But I love theories, right? I love making theories about stuff. I love being wrong in them too. But the thing is, we have 3 Magic the Gathering setting books, right? There might be a 4th coming. There might be even a 5th. But I can also see that the 5th book is an overall book, how you can connect all of the Magic the Gathering books. And the Mordekainen book only supports that theory, Monsters of the Multiverse. As someone, Mordekainen is traveling between the multiverses, or between the planes of existence and the universes, to collect data. So there could be a book that's called Mordekainen's Guide to Multiverses or something.
And now hear me out. There are cards in Magic the Gathering called Planeswalkers, who do in lore-wise exactly this.
Yeah.
So maybe, just maybe, there will be some sort of class option for
maybe, I don't know,
planeswalking shit, or a villainous option or something like this.
I mean, it will be in the book if that actually releases as a book, but it probably won't be a player option. At least not the character option, right? Maybe it's something that the players have access to, but don't have as a single player character. The thing is, though, then obviously Planescape is more or less a thing. Because I'm very excited to see, because that would be very interesting when they actually set up into a connected multiverse thing, right? And now from a business perspective, that makes total sense, because then people people buy this one book that's the center book, for example, and need to buy every single book for the other settings. For the Magic the Gathering settings, to be able to have the full experience. So you bring your audience to buy every setting book you release in the next 4 or 5 years, even, because they announced 3 setting books coming. One old setting, so probably one of the older settings, and not Faerun or Eberron. At least I hope so, that we get a new setting.
That would be good.
And then Magic the Gathering settings all the way, probably.
Yeah, not back to back, but spread out over the next few years. But I think there will be a lot.
There will be a new option book probably coming, like Tasha's or Xenothar's. They will make something like that again. That probably will also be part of. I don't know if it will be before the anniversary, after, or around the anniversary, but there will be another one, I believe, probably for 5.5, so probably after the PHB for that releases.
Yeah.
So, and I am very hyped to see them do more of the Candle Keep Mysteries things, because they said that the people like that, which I saw that is true. Yes, people like this. I would love to see such a book again, because not only can you hire a diverse and big cast of writers for that and give them the freedom. Okay, Candle Keep, right? We all know that they didn't, but you know what I mean. You have a lot of adventures, you have a lot of people that can work on this, and you can create a book that people can use more simply than a campaign, right?
Yeah.
If you buy the Hall of the Dragon Queen book, you don't buy that book to get the chapter 4 into your campaign. You buy the book to play Hall of the Dragon Queen.
Exactly. But with Candle Keep Mysteries like books, you get adventures that you can just plug out of the book and put into your own campaign if it fits in any way. Yeah. And that's just awesome and a big quality of life change if you are in a writer's block when you're writing your own campaign for. That helps me a lot. Even if I just look at these adventures, it just gets the creative juices flowing.
So we're both excited about D&D 5e and what's in the future of the game.
Yeah.
No surprise there. So I think that we should probably get into our episode with Russell E Welch III from Spawn of Chaos.
Yes, we should. See you in a bit.
Hey everyone, editing Emil here once again. I want to quickly tell you one thing about this spot I am speaking in right now, right after the recap before the episode. We are actually opening ad slots in this spot, so if you ever want to have an ad for your stuff on our show, contact us on Twitter and we can get talking about a spot or two. Have fun with the episode.
Welcome back. Now we are with our guest, Russell from Spawn of Chaos, one D&D show. Would you like to introduce yourselves? Who are you? How did you get into TTRPGs?
Fair enough. I am Russell Eugene Welch III, and yes, there's a whole story behind why I'm Russell Eugene Welch III, but that's for another day. I am the DM for the Spawn of Chaos franchise, which is currently 2 different Dungeons & Dragons shows. One that is playing right now. We just recently released episode 6. We're about to release episode 7. By the time this comes out, it may be a few more. And then we are also in pre-production for a second show that takes place within the same universe. What got me into Dungeons and Dragons, I've kind of, ever since college, like dipped my feet in the water in the sense that I DM'd back when 3 was a thing. And then up till the present, I never thought about before that turning it into a show, even though I was doing other show stuff until one of my closest friends, who's also one of my longest running friends, Paige, who's now also on the project with me as our accountant and chief executive officer, was like, you know, Russell, you like writing, you like acting, you like storytelling, you like performing, you like running a business. Why not combine them all into one and then have a D&D show? And I was like, I'm stupid. I should have thought of this years ago. And so that's what got us started. So I have to give Paige credit for having the original idea. And then I just ran with it like a maniac. And here we are.
Nice. Okay. Then I have a quick question about Spawn of Chaos. Since you have one show running right now, episode 6, about to release 7. Okay, walk me a bit through what is the show itself about. How would you best describe the show in a short pitch?
So Spawn of Chaos is a dark, gritty fantasy with just a very light sprinkling of eldritch horror. And it takes place in a gritty world in which there are heavy consequences. So player characters will die. I won't save them. People don't have plot armor. There are tough consequences. It gets hard. We have a brutal crit table that really hammers like the players and the characters and the NPCs. And what I really think brings a colorful and powerful dynamic to the show is how hard we worked on creating a world that has an immense amount of depth and so many different cultures and religions and political philosophies that all the different characters, we sat down with the players and we went through their backgrounds. They picked a place they wanted to be in the world based on what was interesting, and we created their life story. We created their experiences. They were all told different things about like propaganda from different countries and things they believe about the world or that are true or the way to live or how to save the world or things like that. And so they're all coming to the table with extremely rich, deep, expansive backgrounds that they play their characters very well as, which brings a much more visceral and real, rounded and three-dimensional feel to the narrative and story as it progresses, because you have characters who can literally sit down and have an hour-long argument about their differences on philosophy or politics or anything else like that. But all these things, these differences of background and experiences and their lives come out in little bits and pieces throughout the narrative as the story progresses.
Very, very nice. Okay, so about your players, one question. You have, if I look at the banner on your Twitter correctly, 6 players. Is that correct?
We did, but like I said, there's heavy consequences and not everybody made it, but I won't spoil who. So,
okay.
So, I mean, it's a hard knock campaign. So, tune in to find out who bit the dust. But yeah, so that we did. We're now down some. I won't spoil how many, but we're down some. But yeah, so that's how it rolls out.
Understandable. I mean, especially in my games at home, for example, I tell my players beforehand, I won't save you. The only thing that can save you are yourselves. But I will make sure that you guys have fun, right? Because that's at the end one of the most important parts of playing games, right? We are here for fun, or also to produce a show. And I don't know if I think your perspective is probably the same as mine, but it's not fun if I, as the DM, try to actively just make the life of my players miserable, right? Sure, I can make the players miserable, the player characters miserable,
right?
But not the players themselves.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, D&D at its core is a collaborative storytelling experience, which is part of what I think brings the show such strength, is because I don't feel like that I, as the DM, am doing and shouldering all of the work to tell the story and shoulder the plot and move it forward. The players know who their characters are, and they know where their characters want to be and how they want to learn to grow, and I get opportunities, and we have conversations about what could take place to prompt that, and then we throw them in the world, and maybe it goes according to plan. Often it doesn't, because it is D&D, but we have a plan, and we are working together to paint a epic narrative of these characters' lives. And I think that joint storytelling and collaboration really is the strength of D&D.
You just said that collaborative storytelling is the big strength of D&D.
Yeah.
And you combined that with a production of a show, like many people do. Not that there are too many, but right, there are a lot of actual play shows out there. If we are only looking at the big ones, Critical Role, Dimension 20, those are only scratching the surface, the tip of the iceberg. There are so many actual plays, so many good ones, and all of them very different from each other. So I guess the next question becomes, what makes Spawn of Chaos different from anybody else, if there is something that you would say?
So I'm gonna go with two things. I'm gonna first give the pitch that you give, the elevator pitch, and then basically the corporate pitch, and then I'm going to give my personal pitch of what makes a difference to me. So the elevator pitch is pretty simple. We film our episodes ahead of time. We edit them down. We have an idea of where we're going for the episode, and while we never script anything or set any lines out, I do have conversations with the cast members about where their character arc is going, and we have these things in mind. So I think we have an extremely strong, powerful narrative that has a coherent and a satisfying arc in every single episode, so that you're not watching 4-hour episodes that drag or have dead time. You're watching a 90-minute episode where the plot is moving along and the character development is moving along and the combat is moving along. I try to keep combat 3 rounds or less the vast majority of the time, so that it's not dragging down the narrative, or if it's going longer, have the narrative progressing during combat. So I think that's basically my corporate pitch, is it's an edited, well-produced show that has awesome sound effects, cool visual effects if you're watching the video version, but if you're listening, then you also get all the audio. Great music selection, great performances by the character, and it's all pre-edited so that you don't have downtime, dead time, and so it's not taking forever to get there and the plot is moving forward. Now, from a personal perspective, my personal pitch, what I think makes the show different is I think that it feels expansive and deep and real, in not that other shows don't. Other shows have their other charm. If you watch Dimension 20, I love Dimension 20 and I watch so much Dimension 20 and other shows like that. Though you watch Dimension 20 because you love the people that's playing and you laugh with them, and they're really funny and they're a joy. Adventure Zone is another one like that, where you don't watch Adventure Zone because you want to live and breathe and be completely immersed in a living, breathing world that feels completely three-dimensional. You do it because the McElroy brothers are an absolute charm and a joy to listen to. So I think we have a different type of show here. And what we have with a different type of show here is we have great performers. And I work with great actors and I love them to death and they put their heart and soul in their performances. And like we definitely have moments where we laugh and have a good time, but the story comes first for all of us. All of us prioritize moving the story forward and making the story as deep and immersive and powerful and connecting as it can be through the vehicle of D&D. And that's what I think makes the most difference to me is when I sit down and watch an episode, I can sit down and watch an episode that I tape. And then I also was like throughout the process watching for like QC and editing. And when it goes live, I still sit down and I enjoy it because it is moving forward, because there's that plot, because it's moving along and you can immerse in a world where it's like a story. We were trying to make it feel a lot like a TV show where it just trucks along and you're always getting something dynamic.
Mm-hmm. This sounds like an incredible, intricate mesh of things you need to have going on behind the screen that nobody will see. Would you like to tell us some steps you needed to take to put together the show?
Oh, absolutely. So many of the things that go on behind the scenes are like, for example, like we have Nick Little, who's making all the music choices. A lot of times he writes like pieces of music, like the intro piece or like little like pieces of music that represent each character. Like he'll write a lot of the music for the show, like picking and doing all the sound effects work. Like that goes on behind the scenes, but there's also the VFX. There's the green screens behind us. Like you can't see it because you're not on the video call with us, but there's a green screen behind me in the studio that I'm in. We have green screens behind all of our characters, and we have to do the chroma keying for the background, which Emmanuel does. There's the cutting, but there's so much other stuff that goes into the world as well, because I have writers on staff like Anoush and Brian and Kristen, who like Kristen works with me every single week when I create like crazy NPCs or new monsters. And then Kristen will sit down with me and be like, okay, this new crazy monster that you're creating, we're going to figure out a stat block for a similar monster in D&D and then homebrew a bunch of stuff and then try to balance it and make it work. Or Brian will be sitting down with me and like combing through the plot and the narrative and the arcs and then making sure that I've like checked everything and double checked everything and that things are coherent and that there's not contradictions. And Anoush will help me like expand like the world and the cultures within the countries that they go in. And Taylor, who's also our transcriptionist and does the captions for the episodes, also will like they'll be doing things like coming up with new wacky types of like plants. Like we haven't quite gotten to where some of that stuff has bearing in the story yet, but like even like new biomes or like figuring out like how long there's going to be daylight in certain parts of the planet because its angle is weird, is all of these components from so many people on the team who are putting so much work into making all of these little tiny details work together to create the story the way it is. So absolutely, there's so much going on behind the scene. What does it take to put all that together? It takes creating a team of people who are super passionate about D&D and love what they're doing and are also extremely creative, which the process of putting together the team is essentially, I thought about like just reaching out to contacts of like people who are talent agents and being like, I just want to hire a bunch of voiceover artists who I like know can act and perform. But instead we opened up auditions, not just for like the voiceover artists, but for everybody who's on the production team, specifically and only to people within D&D spheres. So we went to D&D pages and communities online and we posted the casting calls and we posted the job positionings within those communities so that we would only get people who primarily first and foremost loved D&D. Because well, it's great that like if some of our like people ended up being actual voice actors who have experience or who have experience in other ways, the first and foremost thing that I wanted on the team wasn't a bunch of professionals who are just working on another show. I wanted people from the D&D community who were first and foremost in love with D&D, because I knew in the end of the day, they would make the best and they would be the best people to work with.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I mean, every time I see an actual play on Twitter, I don't know, promoting themselves in any way and talking about their stuff, most of the time I see behind that just people that love D&D. And I think that's the core essence of it all the time. If you love D&D and really put your heart and soul into the show you want to produce, then you will have something you are probably proud of. You will have something that is good. Yeah, maybe some people don't have a production team behind the scenes like you do.
Right.
Would you say that you really need that to create a show?
No, you don't need a production team. Also, with what you said about that other stuff, well, very well said. As far as a production team goes, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Specifically with us, we're trying to create something that is better produced and is more immersive than anything that's out there at all. We're trying to create the most immersive and well-produced show in D&D. Obviously, we're a bunch of hobbyists and knuckleheads who got together and threw this thing together, and we're on an absolutely razor-thin shoestring budget to produce this thing. So there's a lot of room for us to grow and get things like better mics and better cameras and better lighting and bigger green screens so that people's hands don't disappear when they reach too far outside of the camera and all that stuff. But you don't need all of those things. At the end of the day, D&D and telling a story with D&D and making a D&D show comes down to what you want it to be and the level of complexity you want from it, which is why it's so great. Unlike filming a movie or making an animation show where there's a certain really hard high cap barrier that you have to get past in order to get started, D&D is really easy to get started wherever you are. If you don't have a microphone and you want to record on your phone, if you don't have any experience and you just want to get started recording on your laptop speaker and with your webcam on your laptop or whatever else, like, you can do it. You can record on your phone. Some of our performers are still recording on their phone. Actually, most of them are still recording on their phones, their video that you see in the episodes. So you don't need an entire production team. It depends on how complicated you want to make it. You can make it as complicated as you'd like it to be. Obviously, we have, but if you just want to get started, just get started, because that's priceless experience. The first and biggest hurdle you have to get over is just trying. Once you start trying, you're most of the way there, because all you have to do next is keep learning and growing and expanding. You don't have to produce it the way. You don't have to have green screens like us. You don't have to have sound effects and like music that's written by a team member for the show. You don't have to have virtual effects. You can just sit down with your friends, record audio. And if you're not ready to record video and edit it, then don't even record video. Just record the audio, play a game, have fun, have a good time, and learn from there, and then improve and change the things that are important to you to improve and change. And that's all you need, which is there's such a beautiful thing about the space and the community, is the barrier to entry is not a barrier. Anybody can do it that wants to do it.
And with you just talking about barriers, were there any challenges you faced during the putting together phase or the production phase for that show? And what were they, if there were any?
Were there any challenges? Great question. The answer is yes, all the time, every day. So something this complicated is logistically very complicated and a lot. We set the bar very, very high, and we keep meeting the bar, but it is a mad scramble every single time to get an episode out on time, to get everything edited. Like, the team puts their heart and soul into it, and they're talented and they work hard, but it's impossible to foresee all kinds of strange issues, because we start getting editing into an episode and we find out, the team messages me, is like, "Hey, Russell, where's your outro?" And I'm like, "Is it not at the end of my video?" And they're like, "No." And I have to scramble to record a new outro, which we have a thing called like pink tie Russell, where there's like pink tie intro Russell, pink tie outro Russell, and pink tie reshoot Russell, where like when I lose video or like something at the beginning and end or the middle of video, like I'll basically come in as the episode and be like, "Hi, like, this is a reshoot. This isn't the original," so that people don't start accusing us of like staging all of our stuff and do that. So we have reshoots. For cast, I just have them reshoot it. I'm just like, put on the same t-shirt. Like, the green screen is a green screen, so like you'll never know for that. It's just like, put on a t-shirt, comb your hair the same way, or don't comb it if you never comb it, and people probably won't know the difference, and retake your lines. But there's all kinds of other stuff that happens, like where we can miss something in QC and we're about to post the episode and we're like, "Oh no, we missed this thing. We need to add this thing. We don't have the intro music," or we got to add in the battle maps, or like at this point in the battle map, like somebody's in the wrong spot, because that happens too, because we record the battle maps and sometimes people move their players around, and they move their players around, or I move the characters around, or the the NPCs around on the battle map, and it's not congruent with like what's happening in the episode. And so sometimes we'll like actually have to like restage that, and Caleb will have to go back in and listen to the episode and figure out where people are and then recreate the battle map and film it so that it's actually canon and accurate, so people aren't looking at it and going, what the heck is going on? So there's all kinds of technical stuff that's always coming up every single day, like barriers. But no matter what level of production you're at and level of complexity, there will always be barriers that come up. There will always be difficulties. But if difficulties are arriving, and if they're arriving constantly, early, and often, it's not because you're doing a bad job. You're never doing a bad job or failing because there's complications or issues to solve. The only measure that really matters here is your ability to problem solve and overcome those barriers, because barriers will always happen. They will always happen, and you will almost never see them coming. Like I sit here and I've done this for months and months now. And there's moments where I'll be like, I've basically experienced every kind of problem that could happen. And then a new kind of problem happens. And then I'm just like, nah, I'm never going to experience every type of problem that can happen. And that's okay, because you don't have to have all the answers, and you don't have to know what barriers you're going to run into. You just have to be willing to adapt and overcome them and problem solve. And thankfully, I have a great team backing me who like really puts in a lot of work and helps to solve all those problems. But even if you don't, like, that support can come from your families, your friends, or just the community itself. There's so many great people in the community who are supportive and helpful. If you have a question about how to produce something, you can just @ me on Twitter. I'll probably answer and give you, like, if it's too long to like post in a Twitter, I'll probably inbox you, but you can @ me on Twitter and I'll answer any questions and be willing to help you out. Like, we have a great community of people who are willing to support each other, willing to promote each other, and willing to answer questions and help. And that's a beautiful thing. And that's a resource you should use. So problems will arise, but that's okay. It's part of the process.
Yeah, I think, especially like you said, everyone faces problems. Everyone that has ever produced a show, like we, our podcast, your live show, or not live show, but other friends of mine produce live streams. Other friends of mine produce live play podcasts. I have people that make Patreon maps and handcrafters, and all of those people, every time I talk with them, like, I'm in a group chat with some friends from the community, and everyone, like, what I'm seeing there, everyone faces problems in producing their thing, in anything really, and the best thing you can do is try to solve them all the time. Never stop at a roadblock, because then you've lost, more or less. Then you've lost the game, you could say. You've been beaten by the roadblock. But the thing is, I don't want to say like how structure my D&D games. Every encounter I put in front of my players or in front of people is doable in some way. Sure, it might be hard, but there will always be some way to succeed. There will always be some way to accomplish and overcome what is in front of you. And that's the same in the community or in producing anything, really. Having something, you will always be able to overcome the problem. Ask for help if you can. We have an amazing community, like you said. Yeah, I think that's very important that you brought that up. I wanted to ask a question about a single episode you have. How long does it take from the recording point, or even the point before recording when you plan the episode, till when it will release? Walk me through the process of one single episode that an episode goes through.
Right. Okay. So we're going to set the groundwork of, like, we've already sat down and we've worked with all of the players, and we've built their characters and their backgrounds, and we've built the world. So, like, we have all of this, the framework in place. So Monday morning, I meet with Brian Henry, who's the lead writer, and we sit down and we basically plot out, like, what are all the things, the plot points we'd like to happen in this episode? What are all the things that the party can go off the rails and do? Like, what can we plan for? Like, how can we incorporate and make sure, like, building the NPCs, building the environment, like, what's going to happen, and doing that in a way where it's not really like a singular linear storyline. It's more of like a cube in which the episode takes place that the party can run around in and do all kinds of things. And then after that, him and I meet with Kristen, and then we, like, build the NPCs and the monsters, and Then we meet with Caleb and we build the maps for the episode. And then sometimes we also meet with Anush, and then Anush gets started on like writing a story based on one of the NPCs or a character or something else that will go up on the premium version of our website. So like extra bonus content behind the scenes. And then that's just Monday. And then the rest of the week, we move into all kinds of other stuff, into like gloss over a lot of like nitty gritty back and forth things, like figuring out like what the art's going to be, like building and testing the maps, getting the stuff set up for what's going to go on the green screens for the episodes. And then we get up to the end of the week and we film the episode. So all the talent shows up, we film the episode, and then they send in their audio and their video. The editing team syncs it together, edits, chops it down, and then picks who's showing up, like when it cuts back and forth, and puts the battle maps in there, and then adds the sound effects and the visual effects. And then it goes to the QC department. The QC department watches through it. That's like Paige and Ariel and stuff who watch the episode, and Donovan. And then they're like, okay, you need to fix this, this, and this. They send it back to the editing department. The editing department fixes those things. It gets a final stamp of QC approval, and then we upload it to YouTube. And then it sits there, and then it goes live when it needs to go live. So that's the quick and dirty process of all the things that go into it and all the hands that touch it. So I've definitely glossed over quite a few things there in the middle, but you get the idea.
And one huge part of a D&D actual play show is are obviously the players. Yeah. And what were you looking for when you started to hire your players? And you talked about auditions. How did they go, or what was the process for them?
Okay. Well, I'll answer the question first about what I was looking for, and then we can maybe get into some stories about some wacky stuff that happened in auditions, because we had some wild adventures with that.
Wacky stories are always good.
Always. So I was looking for three really important core things. The first, in no particular order, because they were all critical. I realize I just made a D&D pun there, but that was unintentional, but I stand by it. So 3 things that were all critical is, 1, I needed someone who could play D&D, like well, in an entertaining way. 2, I needed someone who just had good character, because I didn't want to bring anyone on the production who didn't. And then 3, they needed to be someone who I felt like the rest of the team could just get along with, working together, long, hard, late nights, hard deadlines, like scrambling to get stuff done in stressful environments month after month, year after year, so that I didn't drive them crazy eventually. So for our first thing, we just had a meet and greet, and I just talked to the people and I just got to know them. We had like a 10-minute interviews back to back for like almost 2 weeks. It was crazy with all the different people who auditioned. And we were just trying to establish, what kind of a person is this? Does this person have the kind of character, and do they have the kind of personality that we want to work with year after year? Like, there was some people who were super talented, story incoming. There was one guy who was like a extremely talented voiceover artist who did a bunch of like decently high profile like voiceover stuff, and he had a pretty big following too, and it was really tempting to just hire him because he had like, I think it was like 30,000 followers on Instagram or something, which for a show that hasn't even aired yet is like great. And then just like the range of characters he was able to play. But I don't want this to be like disparaging or judgmental to him, because I liked him and he's a super charismatic guy, but I 100% was reading like such strong vibes of 2 to 3 years from now, if I make this guy famous, he's going to be the biggest diva to deal with. Like, he's already a huge diva, and it's going to be super difficult to control from out of the gate. And he's going to want to, like, I've met people like that, and I realize that this is perhaps an unfair or like overly aggressive assumption on my part, but you know, the type of person who you just get the vibe of like, they're going to hog all the glory and they're going to make the show about themselves. And I was like, maybe that's completely unfair, and maybe he isn't that person, but I'm not going to risk that. Like, despite all of these other super appealing and great things, and despite the fact that he's a very charismatic guy, I was like, no way. I'm not even going to risk it because I don't want to bring divas onto the show, because I don't want this to become about like, oh, my character is more popular than your character. Like, I'm more important to the show. Everybody, no matter if they play like a main character or a support cast character, whether they're in one episode or every episode, is an extremely important, critical part of the storytelling process and brings something unique and special to the table. And so that was the first stage, is like basically interviewing people and getting to know them. And then the next stage from there was playing D&D. But before I get into that, I just want to throw in one other funny story about some person's interview. So there's this one kid who was like 19 years old. He had a cute little baby face and like long hair. He looked like the quintessential pretty boy. But when he jumped in his audition, like his first interview, we were like 90 seconds into his interview. We basically just said introductions, and like he cuts me off in the middle of the question that I'm asking him. And he's like, so what do I have to do to get your job? And I was like, pardon? And he's like, well, you're the DM, right? And I was like, sure. And he's like, well, would you be open to considering a new DM? And I was like, well, yeah, if I found someone who I considered was more qualified and could tell a better story, then I would definitely be open to. And he's like, okay, that's the position I'm going for. And I'm just like, wow, okay, that's a lot of balls on this kid here.
That's a power move. I gotta give him that.
I was like, that's a ballsy move. If I was a different kind of guy, this call would probably end right here. But we went all the way through the audition. We ended up with some other drama from him because he didn't end up making it to the next phase, because he is basically like bragging about how like he like writes all this stuff for like books and stuff like that. And we looked him up, and saw a lot of the stuff that he was claiming that he could do or did do was kind of sketch. And so we just weren't sure that, and like we didn't really like have a good read on his attitude from the rest of the interview, because he kept making like the most insane over the top claims, like, oh, like you're going to audition me to be a DM and you'll never even audition anybody else. You'll just instantly know that I'm perfect for the role. Like stuff like that. Like he was laid it on so thick, and we're like, okay. And then like he got really upset in the Discord server afterward when he found out he didn't make it to the next stage, and then started like making like all kinds of like weird off the wall claims, which is something you'll have to deal with sometimes. Is you'll always run into people who are upset and who aren't happy, who you can't please no matter what you do, and they'll look for trouble. And in those instances, don't rise to their bait. Don't rise to the bait and devolve to their level. Like just be respectful, be kind, and ban them from the Discord. And
easy.
Right.
I mean, I think that's probably speaking as a producer, right? You need to make sure that the people you have on your show are also the people that you want to put the spotlight on, like you said, with the two examples we've had. And that's a responsibility you have to bear, right? If you make the wrong choice in a person, that's kind of on you, right?
Absolutely. It's very well said. It's absolutely on me, because if I am responsible as the person who interviews everyone. I'm responsible as the person who's the CEO of the company and the DM, which means like from both fronts, I have a lot of power and authority and influence, and I have to be extremely careful and sensitive about how I use that so that it's fair to everybody else. But I also have to be extremely careful and sensitive about the responsibility that comes with that and how I use it and the consequences of that. And so if I bring on somebody onto the team who 3 months later creates all kinds of problems, yes, they're a problem individual and maybe they had it decently well. But that was my job to vet them. It was my responsibility to make sure they weren't that kind of person. Thankfully, though we have had to part ways with some people on the team, it hasn't been for like, we haven't had to like fire anybody or kick anybody off. We've basically had polite and respectful conversations with people who we've parted ways with and basically decided mutually that it wasn't going to quite work for some reason or another, whether they needed more time for their family or whether they weren't quite a good fit. But I really appreciate and respect all the people that I've worked with, even the people who still aren't on the project or who we had to part ways with for whatever reason, because all of them parted in a very like gracious way with a lot of dignity, and we parted friends on good terms. And so I'm very happy with that.
I think that's especially a big thing, that when you're producing a show, when you're two grown adults even only, that you show at least the respect of having talks with each other, right? That's a big thing that comes again from D&D, I would say, or D&D is about talking, right? You need to have talks with each other. You need to be on the same basis with each other. It's at its core a storytelling game, like you said already, but it's also a communication game, right? You need to communicate with each other. And that's why I think D&D teaches so many great communication skills, which is why I think that, for example, the D&D or even the general TTRPG community is such a great and friendly community itself, because the games we play teach a lot about communication and social skills. Even if you have anxiety, you are still respectful, right? You may not be the most charismatic person or role player, but generally the basis of it is being respectful to everyone around you. And I don't know, I've not seen many people in the community be really, really an asshole or something. Most of them are at least respectful and nice. So yeah, I guess the thing is that while I've seen that obviously some people disagree on something, right? That's normal. We are people. Everyone disagrees on something with someone else. And yeah, the thing is that most of the people I've talked to have all been respectful in that regard. Yes, we disagree. We can talk that out, but it's no problem that we disagree.
Right. Absolutely. Every day on a production like this is a charisma check. Also a constitution check and a will save.
Nice. Okay, bringing us back to the auditions, because you promised us some do you have any other stories you want to tell, obviously?
Yeah, I mean, I shared those two stories. A more positive and general story about the process, though it was also the toughest part. The toughest part of production, period, was when it came down to narrowing it down every single time, because I spent like early mornings, late nights, all throughout the day for weeks talking to all of these people and interviewing all of these people, like interview after interview after interview. And the whole time, like so many of them were in the Discord the entire time. And I was interacting with them throughout the weeks and like talking to them. And like at the end of a long day of auditions, I'd hop in the chat in the Discord and a bunch of them would get on and just be like really understanding and supportive of like, yeah, I understand that's tough. It's got to be a really hard decision to like narrow this down. And that definitely was one of the most difficult things I've done in my life, is to be essentially sitting here with the keys to unlock somebody's dream, the keys to like make their dream realized and open amazing doors and opportunities for them. And getting to know like the heart and soul of the beating heart of these people's passions and dreams and what they want in life, and getting to know them as a person, and getting to know so many great, excellent, wonderful people. And then having to sit there and realize I cannot hire all of these people. I cannot give everybody a position. I am going to have to reduce so many of these wonderful, multifaceted, three-dimensional people down to a set of data points on a spreadsheet, and then push delete on their dream and it will die. And that was really tough. Like that was the hardest part of the process for me. I'm getting a little emotional right now, but that was definitely a really hard process, because you come to care about these people. They mean something to you because they're all people who have feelings, and all of them matter, and all of them have a dream. And you just so desperately want to make so many people's dreams come true and provide opportunities for them. And you can't give it to everybody. And that was really hard, more than anything else in this production process. That's what took a toll on me, because I just wanted to make a difference in all of their lives, and I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. If you need a break right now,
oh, I'm fine.
Just say it. Okay. Especially to that point, I can see it being very hard, because like you said, you meet these people, you learn about them, you talk with them, and you probably connect with more than you will have on the show.
Right.
And yeah, I can see that is very hard, because I've met so many in the 7 months that we have been producing this show or something. I've met so many incredible people in the community, and not even big people that produce something, even simple people that are just more or less consumers on Twitter or Reddit or Instagram, people that play D&D for fun, that have fun, and some of them say, I've always wanted to be a part of a live show. And all of these people, and every one of these people has a different style to them. Everyone is unique. Everyone is a good player at basis, because you can't be a bad player in D&D. And all of them being so different and then you getting so many auditions, so many people that want to be on the show, and you having to make the hardest choice in that whole process, if I've got that correctly, right?
Yes.
It's the hardest choice you have to make, is to get the contestants, or not contestants, but all the people down to the ones you really want and need, and at the end have. I can see that that choice would be very hard for me as well. I don't know if I'm the type of person that could make that decision. I'm probably, I don't know.
Right. It's a lot. It's tough. And I mean, on the one hand, it's so thrilling and exciting because I get to look at these people who are wonderful and talented and who deserve it and be like, I get to give birth to this person's dream and breathe life into it. And together we can, I know I can take a person like this places and make their dreams come true. But then to turn around at the same time and look at other people who are also wonderful people and talented, who I know also deserve it, and to know that I can't do anything for them because I can't choose both. I have to choose one. But I will say everybody who's on the show, everybody who's here, like, deserves it. I really believe everyone who's on the production really deserves for their dreams to come alive, and I will do everything I can to make that happen for them.
Okay, then I want to ask a question about the people that you have on the show right now. And you may have some of which who are not present in episode 6 anymore, like you said, that the world is cruel and harsh, and some might die. Let's say the people that you had before the start, or in episode 1, everyone that's been part of the show.
Right.
How were their auditions? How were they in auditions? What made them the best fit?
Ooh, that'd take a while to go through all of them, but I'll try to speed through it. And also there's like people who would like not just like the main characters, there's also like support cast members who like show up for like a 1 or 3 episode arc. Like I don't think we've had any so far yet in season 1, but we have one coming up very soon. Oh no, wait, we did. We just had an episode come out with one of those support characters as well. So to talk about that support character first. So in episode 6, the one who's there for episode 6 and 7 is also Anush, and he's the writer that I mentioned before. So when for the final stage of the audition process, we played D&D because, you know, that's what we're vetting people for. So that it just makes sense to me. I've had some people be like, what? You actually, like, for the final stage of their audition, just like sat down and played D&D with them? I was like, what did you expect? What did you think we were going to do? Like, this is a D&D show.
It's very simple, but it works the best because you have an example then.
Yeah, absolutely. So for his character, and part of the reason why he also became a writer, and he's a writer and a support cast member, is because right off the bat, I got the impression that his character was he portrayed a character in just that one shot that had some very deep emotional complexities to them that he brought to the table very well in a way that wasn't like super in your face. He didn't hog the spotlight at all. If anything, he was very like humble and generous with giving the spotlight to everyone else and not taking up much time. But in the little time that he did, he really brought a lot of complexity to the character. And I was like, I want this person. I need this person. I mean, there's Kristen, like, who plays another character who's coming up in the second show, brought like a really great charm to her character that just was very, very sweet and had like maybe a slight sinister edge to it. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is, she's going to play a villain for sure. And then Donovan is just the type of person. He also plays a secondary character in the other show, but he's the type of person who's just a joy to be around no matter what he's doing, whether he's playing D&D or not. So that's our support cast characters. For the main characters for this show, the Heralds of Wayne are the one that's out. There's Matt Connor, who's just knockdown talented. Unfortunately, he had to, for a situation that was completely out of his control, he had to leave the show early. So he's only in a few episodes. So that's a huge tragedy. But he's just knockdown talented. Ariel, who plays Rizara, she's just a charm. She brings like she's the type of person who like brings the party together in a very like wholesome, cohesive way, and is always like looking out for people. And she brings that seamlessly into a character where it doesn't feel like, oh, like someone's trying to, you know how you sometimes have a player who's like playing and you can tell they're trying to force the party together as a player and not as their character, and it doesn't feel organic.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, she doesn't do that. She does the thing where like it feels organic and it's coming from not her as a player trying to force everyone to get along, but it comes from her character bringing the party together and taking care of people. And obviously it doesn't always work because it's coming from her character, and the other characters have their own things they want to do and trouble that they want to brew. I just realized that rhymed and I didn't intend it to, but there we go. So yeah, that's something great and invaluable she brings to the table. We have Zayn. Zayn had like a great swagger that was just hilarious and fun. Frank's character just pops up for one episode in the show. That's Sorrel. But then he actually ends up being on the other show. So Frank's character, Sorrel, is like a main cast member of the other show. But Frank is that person who just like makes everything come alive. He's just always funny, always hilarious, always bringing a smile to people's faces and making them laugh, and just brings that kind of like wholesome high energy that just brings a whole room up and brightens it. And so like, how can you not like want to work with a guy like that? Like such a charmer. And then there's Brad. Brad really does a great job of like intuitioning where I'm trying to go with the story as a DM, and taking things that I've sprinkled in the story in the past and making callbacks to them and using them to drive the narrative forward for where I'm going. So he's just a really smart player who's like every DM should have someone at their table, if you can, who's like this, who really can pick up on stuff you sprinkled in the past and hints that you've made, and then figure out kind of where you're going, and then work with you to like build a better story for their character and for the other characters and for the world in general, which is just such a great thing. It's such a huge like load off of a DM's back to know that you have a player who's helping you get somewhere and tell a good story instead of just creating chaos, which is great too. Like as a DM, like you just have to be resigned to the fact that players are going to put on their boots and run around and track mud all over the place because that's what they do.
Yeah, definitely. Especially long-time listeners of the show know that I love subtle hints to something.
Right.
Things like, this noble has a new tattoo. Not saying how it's actually looking, just saying he has a new tattoo, right? Small detail they notice, and then they go on and talk with their noble friend. But what I told them like 5 sessions ago is that all cultists wear a tattoo. And I've had a player once that then said, wait, I want to look at this tattoo again. Does it look like a dragon's wing? I'm like, yes. Oh shit, boys. We need to talk.
Right. Absolutely. Like, yeah, that's exactly, it's great to have a player like that. So Joshua plays Vano, and Vano, actually I've had a lot of people tell me that they relate to Vano. He plays good, relatable characters. He plays like a barbarian, but he doesn't play the barbarian the way you expect the barbarian to be played. It's not just like, oh, I'm just a barbarian and I hit things with a big dumb like lug that smacks stuff. Like he's playing a barbarian with a complex past that has a really like mixed feelings about their rage and their anger and like what it's caused them to do in the past and who they've become because of it. And is very conflicted about their morality and is actually like trailing some essentially what's PTSD from their past experiences. And he's in a very like gentle way, he's sprinkled those things in the story in a way that I think is very respectful and building to a larger, deeper narrative that we've only hinted at so far. But that's what Joshua really has that's great. And then Nick, whose character appears a little bit later in the show, so like because of reasons that I will not spoil, but he just plays a character that he's also one of those people who like kind of has like a sixth sense for where I'm going and tries to help me tell a story. But he also is very good at like picking out party members and like playing off of them and playing with them and drawing them into the story. Like typically he does it in a way where like his character is irritating the other characters, which is great for me as a witness, not as someone who has to personally experience it as the other players do. But he does a good job of like drawing the other characters into a narrative, into a plot arc that exists just within the party, not even within the broader world, which brings extra stuff to the table that I as a DM don't have to produce. I just had to lay the seeds for in like the dynamics of like their background and their history and everything. everything else. And then I just get to watch these seeds grow and the players run with them. And it's beautiful. And I'm so proud of them. It's like watching your kids grow up.
All right. And I think we are nearing the end of our episode, but I have 1/2 more questions for you. The first one would be, is there a difference between DMing a home game and DMing a show game? And if so, what are the differences and what advice can you give us?
Oh, absolutely. So DMing a home game and DMing a game like this, there's some pretty big distinct differences. A big difference is that we get to retake lines. That's always great. It's a little extra work for the editors, but we'll basically say cut, and then we'll be like retake, and then like if I like flub a description, we don't like do it all the time constantly because that's just a lot of work. And like if I leave some ums, ahs, and a little bit of pauses or like stare blankly or stumble over my words, sometimes it's funny and also makes me look relatable and not perfect because I'm not. So we're not looking for like a perfectly produced, perfectly crafted thing. Like it's very human and flawed, like all of us are, but we definitely sometimes if we like really struggle with a line or with a description or something else, or a lot of times if we drop a spoiler that we shouldn't drop, then we'll be like, okay, cut, wait, let's go back to the top. Let's say that line again. We definitely, there's a lot of things where we can stop and we can discuss like where we want this scene to go as like the actors. They'll be like, okay, kind of like, what are you going for here with this scene? Usually they just dive into it and figure it out as they go though, and muddle through it and somehow come out the other end with something great, which is always fun. But it provides a lot of opportunities for you to like stop and start again. And the momentum's a little bit different because you know that things are being taped. Also, there's a lot more preparation that goes into it. Like for a home game, you can very much just like fly by the seat of your pants all the time. Like you can improvise NPCs and maps and backgrounds and settings and encounters. Whereas for something like this, there's a lot of delicate fine tuning that goes into it that isn't necessary for a home game because you have to make sure that the map isn't too big and the party can get across it in an episode. You have to make sure that the balance of the encounter isn't going to accidentally kill one of your PCs if you can help it, or that it's not going to drag out so long that it's going to bore the viewer, because you have to always keep the viewer in mind and their experience as well. So I don't like put the viewer like completely before any of the other players and be like, okay, well, this is the viewer's experience. So all you as a players just have to tough it out and do this because this is what the viewer will enjoy. But I'd like to think of the viewer more as another person at the table. So if you think of the viewer as a player at the table who's not playing but just watching, like making them feel included and enjoying the process. If I was DMing a home game and I had a friend who didn't know how to play D&D or knew how to play D&D but didn't bring their dice and didn't feel like it and didn't want to touch anybody else's dice or whatever, and they just wanted to sit down and watch, like how do you make that person engaged? How do you include them as a friend who's watching so that what they're watching is engaging and fun and interesting for them as well?
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so I would like you again, Russell, to wrap up what we talked about and give some advice in general and how to start a show like this.
All right, so to summarize pretty quickly how to get something like this going is just get started. Don't be afraid. I don't really believe in mistakes for something like this. You don't make mistakes. You just have opportunities to learn, and you either miss those opportunities or you don't. Get started and figure it out as you go. Make improvements as you go. Learn as you go. There's no pressure. Barbarians aren't going to come running down from the hills and string you up or drag you away to row in a galleon just because you didn't like DM perfectly or because you ended up with a continuity error in your episode, which does happen on occasion, or any number of other things. Like if something's not perfect, the consequences are that it's fine, it's normal, it's human, and that's okay. So just get started and learn as you go, and that'll take you 90% of the way there. And then the other 10% is just don't give up. At the end of the day, a champion, the person who finishes the race, isn't a person who ran the fastest or ran the best. The person who just kept getting up and kept going and got there. And at the end of the day, champions, the last person standing in the ring, isn't the person who necessarily is the best or the most talented. They're just the person who kept getting up when everybody else kept falling over and not until no one else was left. So just be the person who gets in there and tries and figure it out as you go and keep getting up and you will get some.
All right. So would you like to shout out any sort of social media or people you talked about? Anything you want to shout out? Now would be the time.
Awesome. So check out Spawn of Chaos is the show. I spent all this time gassing it up, so it should live up to your expectations, or at least I believe it should, because I'm that proud of it and my team. Just go to Spawn of Chaos on YouTube and you can find it there. Or if you want to listen on Apple Music or Spotify or Pandora or any number of other things, we're on like 17 different podcast indexes. You can just go to chaosawaits.com and you can find all of that there. Also on Twitch, every week we air episodes of After Dark, which is basically cast and crew commentary where you get to see like me and some of the cast or some of the crew sit down and talk about what it was like to produce that episode, what thing their character was thinking when they made this crazy choice, like all that behind the scenes content. And then also on our website, we have tons more stories. We have stories that take place from like the characters' backgrounds or other NPCs within the world or other things that are happening that really like diversify and expand the range of the show. And then on top of that, very soon in the upcoming months, we have an entire second D&D show coming out also on the website. So that's chaosawaits.com, or just go to Spawn of Chaos on YouTube and check out the show. I would love to see you there. And if you find your way into our Discord, give me a holler. I interact with there just about every day.
All right, then you can find us at Twitter and Instagram at DoubleDM We also now have a website which is still under construction, so please bear with us, but we're working on it at doubledm.com. So if you want to check us out, head there, head over to Twitter, talk to us. You can find our podcast anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And thanks, Russell, for being here.
Thank you. I want to say I appreciate talking to both of you. It's been a charm talking to both of you. Excellent questions, excellent sage advice, and a great perspective. And it's just been a joy. And I hope this really takes you places.
Thank you for giving sage advice, giving advice to all the people that are out there listening, looking to start a show, looking to further their craft in producing, anything like that. It's been great experience listening to your experience.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so thank you guys for listening, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.